Oh, here we go. All right. We are officially recording. So welcome to episode 3 of the Team Darren Vert podcast. I'm Greg Sissengrad.
Started before Chris got on.
I know, it's okay. We only have a limited amount of Zoom time because we haven't upgraded yet.
Yeah, I understand.
So I don't want to lose out any good stuff. Spoiler alert, you'll probably watch it by then, but our last one got cut off on Jen's last point. So
well, I don't have the timer ticking down like Greg does. So, oh well.
We're still working out. This is not a finely tuned operation here.
Well, it's fun to be in on the ground floor.
Yeah. So I did have a lot of questions. Oh, I guess we need to intro you first. So we're talking with the race directors of Blaze Trails, one of our favorite running company or trail racing company, race organization in our area. So we're talking with Ann first, and Chris is going to jump on. So I'll let you do a little short intro. Sorry, I should have let you know ahead of time.
That's all right. I'm Ann. My husband is really the race director, and I'm just the person behind the race director. I always joke I'm his director of communications, because that's what my day job is as well. So that is he's the one with the details. I'm the one who takes what he does and puts it on paper. So he's really the brains behind it and the passion. So
I think you're a good team.
I think we're a great team, but we're also, the good thing is, so he loves the long distances and I run the short distances. So I fully respect people and say, you know what, you don't have to run long distances if you don't want to. You can live a perfectly meaningful life and run a half marathon and say that's enough. There is nothing wrong with that. Chris doesn't feel the same way. He on the long distances. So
even if you run the long distances, you don't always have to run the longest distance.
No, you don't. And you have to run past those shorter distances to get to the long distance.
Yeah.
Oh, so here I'm popping on twice this time.
Oh, wow. Here we go.
Oh, hi, I'm Ann Barnwell, the right.
Oops. Well, I have a little plug-in for that.
Yeah. Brought to you by Ann's other business. All right, Chris, you have to. Oh, there you are.
Oh, there he is.
Cool.
All right. So you missed Ann's introduction. So let's do a short intro for you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm Chris Barnwell, and I am the race director of Blaze Trails Running, and this is a company that puts on trail running events throughout North Texas, Oklahoma, and other places. Ann and myself do a lot of we really enjoy this. It started out as something small, and it's just a real pleasure to be able to serve the trail running community.
Yeah, let's start. I did have a set of questions, but let's start with the beginning of Blaze. From I should probably know. I don't know which came first, grasslands or Rockledge, and to where it is now. So.
Okay, yeah. So, interesting story about grasslands. I had after completing the slam in 2013, I thought that I wanted to direct some trail races or just become a race director. And one of the things that was kind of interesting, because I go around and look at things and see, as many people, when you really get into this, you really think about wanting to do something, more with running. You want to do something to really integrate it into your lifestyle. So I remember when Western States actually had the RD position open up, and I was like going, oh, wow, that would be really cool. And this was like, somewhere around 2012. Of course, being naive like I was, I didn't realize, how coveted that kind of a
Yeah.
job would be. And so Anne told me that if you wanted to be a race director or something like that, you should find a volunteer opportunity. But after, completing the slam, sometime, I'd been talking to Anne, several times, and I said, one of these years, I remembered, that with NTTR, that Grasslands had had some trouble, finding an RD back around, I think, 2012. And I told Anne, I said, one of these days, I said, I bet you it's going to come back up. And I said, when it does, I'm going to be ready to say that I want to be the RD. And so I'd been out on a run in December of 2014. Paul Smith, the prior RD of the race, was there, and he started talking about moving to Colorado. And I came back from that run, and I told Ann, I said, Paul is saying he's going to, continue directing the race, but I said, I really believe that he's going to end up, finding out it's going to be too tough to do that from Colorado, and he's going to do this. Sure enough, a couple weeks later, probably about a month later, we ended up getting an email to the NTTR news group,
I
in
remember
Yahoo,
that. Yep.
like it used to be, yeah. And they were looking for a race director. I was, I immediately replied, like less than 15 minutes went by, and I replied and said, I said, I want to do this. And I think it really kind of shocked, Paula and Dave Billman, who were kind of, the custodians of NTTR, at the time, because it had, they had gone on such a long journey to try and find that race director. So Grasslands was the first one. The first race that I directed was in 2015.
I
Very
did.
cool.
Yeah. That's I didn't. It seemed like it's been a lot longer. So I know 7 years. It feels like there's been a lot of growth in those 7 years. And let's, I guess, talk about your current environment now. It's grass. It was first Grasslands, and then Rockledge Rumble came along, and then where are we at with how many races?
Yeah, right now we're probably. I think for this year we're going to be putting on 9 or 10 events.
Wow.
There's a couple of them, that we're running into some, some scheduling challenges because obviously there's only so many dates on the calendar that you really can use. But in addition to the 7 that I was doing before, and the 4 that I'm taking over from Trail Racing Over Texas in the next couple of years. Denton Area Running Club, also transitioned a couple of their races as well, and so it's quite a bit. So we're going to be up to 9 this year, and it seems like, I mean, growing pains, scale.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, it's hard at times. It's very trying. Got a lot of problems to solve, but it's always very exciting.
It's a great problem to have when, I mean, we don't take days off, we're basically working every day, and we don't say that in complaint. We say it in how lucky we are that we're able to do this. But it's insane right now, and it's all a good insane. So.
I wanted to touch on, the calendar, because one of my questions was, the current environment that we're in is having, where you can't find an open spot on the calendar that conflicts with another race or another area races. Is it good that we have? It's good for the runners. I would guess that we have all these options that we could basically race almost every weekend without, going a few hours away. But does it dilute? How do you feel? Does it dilute the quality of races? I know you can't put on a race, or at least the way you're structured now, put on a race every couple of weeks, every few weeks. So can you talk about that?
Well, that's a really good question. And it's something, that I think, that we all, kind of wrestle with. I mean, I know that was something that, that Joe Presitis wrestled with
Yeah.
at one time. And I know that, Rob certainly had to wrestle with it as well. Um, I think it's really tough. I mean, I don't, it's like we're going through and we're trying to figure it out, as we go along. I do think it's good for the runners, but I also think it's good for the growth of the sport because I think that it gives people a lot of different avenues to come into the sport. And I think that, you just don't know where people are gonna, who knows who. Not too long ago, we were looking at some of the demographics, in the area, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, because if you look at the bigger picture of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you look at some of the analytics, there's supposed to be, around 200,000 or 300,000 people in this area that are into trail running. And you
What?
look at, yeah, and good news for all of us, right?
Wow.
And it's really, it's really amazing because I'm sitting there like thinking to myself, well, I don't know these 200,000 or 300,000 people, and I need to know
Absolutely
them.
not. We have such a small community, or so we think.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's very small community.
Yeah, I
200,000
mean,
people doesn't seem small.
right.
That's
Especially as long
incredible.
as you've been entrenched in it, you feel like, oh, I would know. Yeah, I would know all the trail runners. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and you probably see this a lot too, Greg and Jen, but it's like all the time we'll go somewhere and we'll talk to somebody else and we'll be like, hey, do you know this person? And they're like, no, I don't know them. And we're like going, wow, that's amazing. Why do you not know this person?
Yeah.
Or we'll be out running someplace that's local and we'll see someone and we don't know them and
Right.
we'll think, how do we not know that
Yeah.
person? Like we just kind of somehow feel like we're supposed to know every single runner in the area. Or like someone will register for one of our races and they'll be, we'll look at the address and realize, wow, they live really close to us. Well, wait a minute, why don't we know this person?
Right.
And it's, it feels like it is a small sport, but it's not quite as small as we think it is. But we do that a lot.
That's when you get on Strava and start stalking people.
I do a fair amount of stalking. Like that's how we found Bryson.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're out running at Cross Timbers, and this tall, blonde-headed guy just speeds past, and we're like, "Who the heck is that? Like, where did he come from?" Found him in McKinney. I was like, I went home. I was like, I found him.
Well, I mean, you never know. We were at Wasatch one year and Chris was running, talking to a guy, and then he passed him and he was wearing a grassland shirt.
What?
Yeah, it was from the first year, and it was really funny because I'm out there and I'm this guy passes me and I look on the back and I'm like that looks like the NTTR logo, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like that's one of our shirts. And I get up there and I start talking to him, and it was this guy who used to live in the area. His name was Scott Coons, and he
remember that name.
Scott, incredible guy. I mean, it's like, he used to live in Salt Lake City, and he got started years ago. He ended up finishing, his 10th Wasatch a couple of years ago, which was really, pretty cool. But he started like, whenever he was like in his 20s. But yeah, I mean, that was really cool. And he ends up separating from me, and I said, okay, when you get up to Lamb's Canyon up there, I said, tell Ann I said hi.
Yeah, so I'm up at the top of Lamb's Canyon watching the runners come, waiting for Chris, and I see a guy coming, and I'm like, oh, that looks like a grassland shirt. He gets closer, and I'm like, that really, I mean, I don't have my glasses on. That really looks like a grassland shirt. And all of a sudden, he's up, and I just yell to him, and he's like, are you Ann? And it was so funny that there we are, we're in the middle of Salt Lake City, we're in the middle of this 100-mile trail race in Utah, and I'm seeing a grassland shirt. So that was a lot of fun, and needless to say, he made the social media page. So
very cool.
Yeah, I did want to, since you already jumped to Wasatch. I was saying for the end, but I did want to talk. We were going to talk Blaze, but I did want to talk about your return to Wasatch and your history with it. How many times you've how many times you've gone, and obviously it is your favorite race. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. It's one of the races that I think really kind of it holds a special place in my heart, for a variety of reasons. But one of the things that I really like about it is just for a race of that size, I mean, it really kind of it still has that real kind of grassroots feeling, and I know you've been there before, as well, so you know what I'm talking about on this. I mean, it's kind of cool when John Groban gets up there at the pre-race briefing and says, there's a lot of famous people here, and we're not going to recognize any of them.
yeah,
It's everybody. It always gets a good chuckle out of it. But Wasatch, the first one was, in 2013. Registered in 14, but got a bone bruise on my knee and had to cancel. 15, I finished again. 16 and 17, I started but dropped due to mid-race injuries. One year was a rolled ankle that swelled up like a grapefruit. The next year, I fell onto I slipped on a rock and fell onto my chest and bruised a couple ribs on a water bottle. Each time I continued going all the way to Brighton before dropping. Not very bright, when you really
yeah.
think about it, no pun intended. And then went back in 2018 and finished again the last time, even after sustaining I think 4 falls. Anne's got a great, or we have a great picture of me standing in the CVS looking for first aid supplies after the race, which was really funny because I've got dirt all up and down my white shirt and blood on my elbows and my knees and everywhere. I mean, it was awesome.
I can relate.
Yeah, I think most of us can. And most of us have been in those places afterwards and you get the looks and yeah. Yeah, it's a great race.
It's I guess we can jump back into. I did want to talk about like post pandemic race
Mhm.
directing. What what challenges have you seen, or what have you had to change? I think Anne has mentioned it was a challenge trying to maintain your business. Well, obviously it was a challenge. So talk us through what you guys had to do to maintain the business, and what are you doing differently now, or what are you having to do differently now?
Well, one of the biggest things that happened, at the beginning of the pandemic was, I mean, it was really crazy having to cancel the race 10 days out. Um,
I remember that.
that was, one of the hardest things that we had done. We'd already, gone through that kind of thing in the prior year with having to cancel Rockledge and, do the flooding out at North Shore. And so we had a little bit of experience with with what to do. But the first thing in my mind with when as time went on that year was it was really about preserving capital. That was the main thing that I wanted to do, because I didn't it was very uncertain, and I wasn't really sure about putting on additional races after in the second half of the year, because everybody had canceled so many at the beginning and people were talking about postponements, things like that, and I didn't want to really go out and put the money and start to commit resources, have people register, and then have to go through that whole thing again where I would end up having to cancel for the fall. And it's just one of those things. And so the decision that I made, mid June, when the COVID numbers were growing again, was, I'd probably be better off just to go ahead and cancel and wait until next year to do it again. In hindsight, looking back, should I have done that? I don't know. Probably not. A lot of people were going to trail races, but like I said, I had no idea what was going to happen, and that was the best path forward to ensure that we were going to survive and continue to thrive in the future.
It's hard when you're seeing other race directors that were trying to put races on and had to keep canceling. Like Rob had to do that several times.
Yeah.
It's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling for us. It's not a good feeling for the runners. It's and for that matter, you also have to think about there's a responsibility. Are we going to have people travel from wherever they're from to these small communities?
Yeah.
So, until vaccines were really readily available, it just didn't feel like the right thing to do, right,
Yeah,
wrong, or otherwise. And we can think about it over and over again of should we have done something different, but it's hard to always know.
yeah. I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I was concerned about. One of them was, like with 6-0, I didn't really want to bring, like a ton of people from the DFW area out to, the ranch where, Kim and Ted live, and, have them, potentially exposed to something like that. That was a big concern, especially, in, June of, 2020, because, as we've seen now, the COVID cases all, started, really hitting a lot of the smaller communities much later than it did early.
Yeah.
And like I said, the last thing that I would want to happen is for something to happen to them, as a result of our race.
Makes sense. No, I thought y'all handled it really well. I always appreciated your concern for the health of the trail community overall. And just like you said, when you're bringing people in from all over the place and we're mixing together, I mean, whether you have masks on or not, it's still a really high chance of transmission. So,
Right.
Well, and last year we were able to put on the race, and that ended up being a little crazy because, the state of Texas, changed their mask mandate again about 10 days before. But of course, that's federal property. So, yeah, and I want to preface in saying we can stand on a long line of people who dealt with some challenging things during COVID, where there are people who've had things a lot worse. But if there is one thing I can say is small businesses have to do what they have to do to follow any regulations, and just do what is right for their business. And that there's always some fun stuff going on with that.
Yeah.
For the most part, the runners were fantastic though. And it all went off without a hitch, and everyone was, they put their buff on, they were good to go, and they went on their merry way, and they enjoyed their run. Gosh, it felt so good to be at a finish line again.
Yeah.
After an entire year. Nothing feels better than being on that finish line after not being able to be there.
Yeah, and the Forest Service really liked my mask on zones, and all that. They thought that was pretty cool. Got some good compliments from the guys that give me my permits out there.
Yeah. Got to keep the permit guys happy for sure.
Absolutely.
We like to keep them happy. That's really important.
So Grasslands is the next big event for you guys. Everything's on schedule, set for a good turnout.
Yeah, everything, we're getting everything ready. All the plans, we're getting ready to, pretty much kind of get back to the way things were, before the pandemic. I think, some of the things that have changed, at least in the last year since we did the last Grasslands, the CDC basically came out and has said that they believe that it's much safer. The outdoor events are much safer than indoor events, and so that's one of the key guidelines that I have to put together in all of my my COVID plans that I put out for the different permitting authorities. And it's been great to see that now, because it just makes things a lot easier, and I'm glad at the end of the day that it's all kind of backed up by one of the major influencers, as into the federal government now.
I did want to ask about Dana Peak, because a certain person has her eye on on that
Kinda-
race because
a lot of people are wondering when registration is going to
Yeah.
open.
I mean, I
I
went,
do
yeah,
too.
I went
Well,
last year.
I'm
It was
hoping
a
March
great race.
1st.
Yeah, super tough course, technical in sections, fast in sections. I really enjoyed it, and I only did the 20K. And I had a great time, and I told Jen that once I got back, so you're gonna love this course. And I heard rumors that there's gonna be a longer event.
Yes, this year we are adding 100K.
Yeah.
And it's like right now we're kind of, I mean, I've kind of been going back and forth, because last minute last year we ended up having to change the course
Fire.
because there was a fire on the western side of the park over there. But that's, it's a very flat section over there. So, instead for the 50K, what was supposed to be a single loop 50K course, it ended up being, like a 20-mile or whatever loop, and then the 20K. But as a benefit to all the runners, it actually added a whole lot of vert, which was really kind of cool. It's about 3,700 feet, I think, for the 50K out there. It's like, what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to balance, the length of the course with with the vertical gain. I mean, I could probably do it as 3 loop, and then I could make it into something really monstrous, like 8,000-9,000 feet. But I do kind of like to use as much trail as possible on the courses, just because I think that's that's the way a lot of the races are that I like to do. It just kind of keeps it interesting, and it's you're not always out there kind of like in European vacation saying, hey, look kids, Big Ben, Parliament, so it's kind of cool like that.
Well, a race director, another Texas race director once described their courses as that they just try to put more race distance into the course than what the land would offer. In other words, they weren't going to try to just pack a bunch of extra loops just to get a longer distance. And I've always had a lot of respect for that, for having that view of how, let the land determine what your distances are.
Which is a bit of a challenge in Texas, right?
It's a big challenge in Texas for sure.
So if you want to get,
you definitely can't get away from looped courses, but I'm just, I have a limit. I have a loop limit.
That's a great topic right there. What's your loop limit, Jen?
Yeah, let's hear this.
I feel like, well, I've ran Brazos Bend, and that was 6 loops, and that was way too many loops. Yeah, I feel like 3 loops is my limit. Yeah,
Lake Murray,
3 loop limit.
Well, the funny thing is, I it's like I used to say, the same thing, and I think I do have a loop length limit, I think. Because before I ran Rocky, I mean, Rocky was like my 600 that I ran.
Oh yeah.
And I everything I'd run was all much longer. I mean, it was like like point to points and out and backs and clover leafs and things like that. And I was actually I'd always said, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever run Rocky, because I said, I can't imagine running a bunch of loops like that would be fun. But when I got out there and ran it, I mean, a lot of people do. They go out there and try to run it for speed. And I went out there, and it was a heck of a lot more fun, than I thought, minus the 90 minutes that I sat frozen at Damnation, kind of feeling sorry for myself while Augustine took care of me out there.
At mile 94.
Yeah.
Mile 94.
Oh,
it's
wow.
My dubious achievement there.
Okay, well, I could do longer loops, but yeah, like a shorter, like like if you're just talking about like 6 to 10 mile loops, I can't do that. I can't do that over and over. And then every time on the last loop, I feel like I've never seen that place before in my life. Like, I don't know what happens, but every single time, no matter, I'll be like, I must have missed a turn. I must have missed a marker, because every single time I feel like I'm lost.
It looks a lot different at night.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Like I've done it on 50Ks. I mean, every single time I'm like, I just feel like, it's like Groundhog Day or something. I don't know. Everything is new.
That was one of the things that I always thought was really cool about the 52 miler out at PK, though, because I mean, even though it was, it's three, loops out there.
Mhm.
The terrain more than makes up for it, without
Yeah.
a doubt. I mean, that was always one of my favorite, local races, years ago and all that,
Yeah. Now I did that 52 miler and I did it. Like I was on that little sandy section
Mhm.
and I was like, oh my God, I've missed a turn. Like I was for sure that I was lost. And I knew I was in third. And I debated on going backtracking to try to find where I turned wrong. And then I finally like, screw it. You're just gonna have to tell Rob at the finish line that somehow you cut the course and that you didn't really get third. Like I was like, I am not going back at this point. And then I just kept running. And then finally I make that little loop and I get back on back on the course. And I was like, wait a minute. I wasn't ever lost. Like it was so weird. Anyway.
Oh, I think Anne had an experience like that out at Possum Kingdom as well. Maybe not you, but you saw a lot of other folks that did.
Well, what I did, and this was when it was Dave's race, and you do that first loop. I guess I went the wrong way. I mean, I did the same exact distance, but I went the wrong way around. And so I'm seeing these other people coming along, and I'm like, is it an out and back? I mean, because of course, I didn't look at the course map ahead of time. So that falls in the category of do what I say, don't do as I do. As I say, you look at the course map, but I didn't. So I'm trying to figure out why all these people are coming back. And it wasn't until later when I looked at it and realized that me and several other people, of course, because I also followed the person in front of me, also what you're not supposed to do. And we were all going the wrong way around.
Funny.
But, still did the distance. So I think I got top in my age group that year. I was pretty excited.
Yeah.
Those things don't happen anymore. That's all right.
Now, I did want to talk about Lake Murray, especially the 100. It seems like you guys are making a concerted effort to really grow that race. Jen and I, and Team Denver were out there manning the Tucker Tower 8 station last year, and we got to see a lot of action. And I know I won't talk. I'll let you guys talk about it, but I know I wanted you to talk about some of the things that you've been doing. Trying to get a sub 24-hour finisher, the first female finishers, and some of the things you're trying to do to grow that race.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is, that, we kind of lost momentum between the first year in 2019 and in 2021, because after we canceled in 2020, we ended up with almost, we're pretty much the same number of entrants in the 100 miler
Right.
between, each year. So we only had 10 people the first year, and we had 10 people, the second year, including only one female in each of the race. Well, you look at the numbers on this. I mean, it's not hard to figure out that if you only have one woman registering, the odds of getting, a lot of people, a lot of women to finish are probably going to become slimmer and slimmer. Between that and the weather, the first year, I mean, first year we had 4 inches of rain on the Thursday before the race, and it was pretty much a muddy mess. But ironically, we had 3 finishers that first year, including one sub 24. Whereas this year, we had 10 finishers, but it was the heat that got them. This year, a lot of people got messed up with that. We had, well, actually, I'll come back. We didn't have one finisher. We had one official finisher and one unofficial finisher, on this. And I can come back and say that now because we did add an extra couple of hours to the finish time for the race. or extra couple of hours. We basically said if you make it to the final aid station by a certain time, then you will finish the race, is effectively what we said. As long as you continue to make forward progress. And what that means is if you get there, you can't go and take like an 8-hour nap and then come back and finish, or even a 30-minute nap. You've got to get in and
moving.
out.
Yep.
We're not treating it like a stage race. But that's one thing. And, the other thing is, Ann and I had been talking about this, and we've been saying, we really want a woman finish, and we really want to see another sub 24 finish out there. And so I kind of came up with the idea and said, okay, I know that, if you look at it, the finish rate being, 30% and, and 10%, or whatever, it looks kind of daunting. And so we said, okay, we're going to open it up, and we're going to give away some entries to people who think that they can do this. And so we basically said, put out a call and said, if you come to us and tell us that you think that you can, and you can convince us that you'll train up for it and go out there and give it a good try, then we'll let you into the race. And we limit it to a like a certain number of entries. And we're still going out and doing that. And just so anybody can see, it's like, only thing I'm going to say is, I don't understand why somebody wouldn't want that, sub 24 buckle there, Wasatch inspired sub 24 buckle here.
That's a gorgeous buckle.
That's beautiful. I wish I was free that weekend.
That's okay. We'll get you. Well, he'll design a nice one for Dana too. So.
Oh yeah, I've already got some ideas on that one. It'll be
great.
Cool too. Yeah.
What I'm gonna say is Chris is obviously passionate about the 100-milers. He's got the Western states. He's got all of that. I don't run those distances, but we both feel really strongly that this sport needs more women in it, and we need to do what we can to encourage it.
Love it.
I don't have to be the one out there running it to still believe in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that, in ultra running, it's interesting when you look at the statistics on road races and marathons, and you see it's almost like, 60-40, I think, women to men, finishing those races. And it's just, it's kind of strange to me that you don't see as many women, moving up into those, into the other distances. Now, I think there's probably a lot of, reasons for that, because oftentimes women have a lot more responsibilities in the home and things like that than, men do. And I'm not trying to make any kind of political statement, saying that that's where women's place should be, because I don't believe that at all. And if I did, I wouldn't.
No.
Not if you want to live and tell the tale.
You might have to stay in that man cave.
No, I don't have to, because she knows exactly how I feel. And having and the thing I also say is, having been a single dad, and all that stuff, taking care of my own kids before before we combined households and all that, when my kids were preteens and teens and preteens, I know how difficult it is, because I shouldered a lot of that myself.
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys have another 10-15 minutes? Because we're about to lose it, and I can start another call.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So I'm gonna end it here so I can cut it off appropriately, and then I will text to start recording now, because I think we were on a pretty good topic, and it's something that I know Jen and I have talked about in the past. So, and it's deserving of a good conversation. So I don't know where we dropped off. I'll splice it together, but I'll go ahead and finish your thoughts about the current state of women in ultra running, and I know Ann in general probably have some pretty good opinions. So.
Well, I don't know, having, being kind of, like a mediocre male runner, I have a lot of respect for a lot of these, really fast, female runners.
Well, and I'll say as a woman, and and I've always tried to stay physically fit. I've never been, one of those that was trying to be competitive. I think as a woman, it's so often you're viewed, you can by some people be viewed as selfish for trying to be out there and be athletic, competitive, and you even, I still see it where there can be a double standard. A man's running a race and no one thinks twice about it, but a woman, that question of, well, who's taking care of her kids? So I think there are still a lot of double standards, and it's unfortunate. I mean, we see a lot of people who do a great job. Like, I'll call out Liesl and Tyler Standish. You want to see a couple with young kids. I am blown away with how they seem to balance all of that. It's probably lucky Chris and I didn't marry till our kids were older because we're a bit selfish with our running. We never really wanted to take the kids with us. We love them, but we kind of viewed running as our time away. But it's really impressive, these couples that seem to have it figured out. I don't know how they do it when their kids are that young. It's impressive.
I don't know how people do it when their kids are young either. I guess I probably started running. Allie was probably 4 or 5, so she was little. But I mean, I didn't get into the longer distances until she was a little bit older. And it's just hard. Just balancing work and home responsibilities and kid activities and training and then working in a race. That's really difficult. And honestly, it's a little bit easier when they're younger, when they don't have as much stuff to do. Because the older they get, the more activities there are. And, Allie's high school years have been really hard just because, when you're playing high school volleyball, you're 2 days a week. And then club volleyball is in the spring, and it's all the time. Anne knows, she's done it.
Yeah. My daughter, my
time suck.
And it's all activities. I know Chris's daughter always did a lot of theater, and it's it's the driving back and forth, and it's the figuring out, and kids don't understand. They're like, well, you need to pick me up. You're going to have to pick me up sometime between this and this. And so you're going, okay, so when am I supposed to?
When am I going to run? Yeah.
And trying to balance all of that.
Yeah. It's, but yeah, I honestly, and I know people think, it's more, there's more to it than that. And maybe I do think there probably is some level that a lot of women feel maybe they don't belong. I think women kind of tend to have, especially like if you're just, an average, like, just an average runner, I think there's some trepidation getting out there, feeling like you may not belong within that community. I think within trail running, we like to act like we're all badasses, or people on the outside really more so than people on the inside kind of think that we're badasses. And that can be a little bit, that can be scary for someone who doesn't think that they're tough enough, or that they can carry that torch in that way. And so that's one of the things I love about Team Dirt and Vert, is that I feel like we've got a really inclusive group that just encourage. I've seen women and men, but women especially, find their running partners through our group. And then I've run into people from our group running together at Cross Timbers. And I just think that's the coolest thing ever, that that they found that person to get out there with. And so I'm not really sure what the answer is, though, to female participation in the longer distances, because I just think a lot of it has to do with how much time they have to juggle.
Well, I mean, one thing that I can definitely say, just from what I've seen, with y'all's group and everything, I mean, y'all definitely inspired a lot of women to tackle these distances, and I think that's just, I mean, I think that's incredible. You know, I see it as a race director, because, you know, it's like I see people coming up to the races, you know, wearing the gear and everything. And, you know, we even, you know, it's like even, you know, it was really funny because even, I guess, what was it, 2 weeks ago? We went to Ray's wedding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were driving through McKinney going to Ray's wedding, and we were out on some of the country roads out there, and then, you know, we saw somebody up there, and I was like, I bet that's one of the Dirt and Vert people and all
Well,
that
I
stuff.
think that's
And we
paid
get
off.
up there, and she's wearing one of the shirts that has the Dirt and Vert logo on the side, and it
Awesome.
was Pam Pam,
Oh, okay.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
and it was so cool.
Well, I think you both were touching on a point, and maybe now we're kind of normalizing. Well, it's hard to normalize something crazy like 100 miles, but maybe normalizing that it doesn't take 15, 20 hours a week of training. And I think a lot of the thinking around how to train for these things has changed now.
Yeah.
It's not in the early aughts where Anton is running 200-mile weeks and shaving his shoes and doing things like that, because before then all you could follow is the training of ultra runners, elite ultra runners on blogs, and you're trying to emulate that. And now with the resources that we have on social media, YouTube, everything, you see different kinds of training, and then you see, quote, normal people doing amazing things. And like for Jen, she mentioned in an earlier podcast, she doesn't run that much. It's relative, but she has some 40 mile is a pretty good week, and she'll have some peak weeks, because she just doesn't have time to run every day. And even if she did, we probably wouldn't want that. So I think, especially, and Pam is the same. Pam is, I guess we'll throw it out there. She's going to be doing the 100 at Lake Murray. And she has full-time job, two smaller kids. So they're not driving around. Like, I can just leave our kids and they can they can drive and pick up their food, or they can Uber Eats, whatever. So I think maybe showing that you can work around some limitations in your schedule and still do amazing things and train and challenge yourself, even if it might not always go well, but it's worth a chance. So I think just normalizing what's possible on there's no cookie cutter way to train for these things.
Yeah.
So there's a piece of that.
Yeah, and different challenges come at different times, right?
Yes.
You start a new job, or you start you expand a business, and suddenly everything, your schedule gets changed, and it's figuring out all of that. It's kind of like it's kind of like breaking the puzzle apart and then figuring out, okay, how do we put this back together and make this work? So it's but that's for all of y'all. I'm good with my half marathons.
I'm running only short distances until the fall.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So Chris, did you recruit some Pacers crew for Wasatch?
There's some people that have come forward and said that they might be interested. So, we'll have to see. We're getting there.
Good.
We're definitely getting there. I might try something a little differently at Wasatch. From a pacer standpoint. I've only taken pacers from Brighton on.
Yeah.
In the past, or no pacer. And I'm thinking this time I might want to try one from Lambs, Lambs on. I don't think I want one from Big Mountain. It's, that's only it's like 33 miles into the race, and I feel like it's a little early, but
Thing with Wasatch, I think it's probably one of the easiest in those western half races that are point to points and things like that. Probably one of the easiest races that you can crew.
Oh, really?
Oh, it is. So, I'll say this. So in the scheme of that summer when Chris did the slam, it was by the time I got to Wasatch, I was like, is that it? What, like, I mean, I think I went to a yarn store to buy yarn to make a scarf. I met a friend for breakfast. I mean, like, I slept, which was great. I mean, like, I was like, I still have time. I, of course, found beer, which that in Salt Lake City isn't.
That's not an easy task.
So, I mean, like, I had more free time than think I had had the entire summer. So, and from a crewing standpoint, Wasatch is a piece of cake. Yeah, running it, different story. So.
Now, I want to go back to this because I know, and before you jumped on, Chris, I think Ann was, I can't remember what we were talking about, but you're, you're from an older school, not crowd, but older school thinking of how we take on these longer distances, because I know you mentioned that you very rarely, sometimes Ann doesn't even go to the races, so sometimes you're completely solo, and most of the time you're not with a pacer. And in the previous podcast, Jen and I talked about when should you have a pacer or something. We talked about that. It's kind of a shared experience where if someone wants to be a part of your race and get a piece of that, let them be a part of it. So kind of talk about your thinking on how you grew up in the sport and to where you are now.
Well, for the record on this, I mean, I didn't go completely pacerless, or successful pacerless until 2018. And so the races that I'd done before, I had at least one pacer in pretty much all of them. In 2018, it was a little bit different, and part of it is, I don't know, part of it was just kind of like, thinking through the logistics, and in 2018, it just kind of made, especially for Bighorn, it made a lot more sense to not have one, because, I mean, I was flying into, I mean, the logistics on getting
hard to get there.
Yeah, and even at that, I had to leave right after the race to go to a wedding, and fly directly from from Wyoming to upstate New York.
Wow.
And so it just really didn't make sense. I'm still actually, I mean, now mentioning Bighorn, I'm just still laughing a little bit about after the race. I remember all of us talking about trying to go somewhere and get something to eat and all this stuff, and then it just didn't happen.
Oh yeah,
I think everybody crashed out.
Yeah, like we and that was actually the first race where I didn't have a pacer. Fiona and the kids went and crewed, and to your point, and that is a horrible race to crew.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's really tough. There's a lot of mountain driving. It takes hours to get to 8 stations, and there's really only 3 spots.
It's like 3 spots.
I remember
a fourth, but one was not really necessary, but very tough to crew. And then when we all finished and everyone's on a high still, the adrenaline's pumping. So, let's go back and we'll shower and then we'll go eat somewhere. And I can't remember what I probably just told Fiona, can you just text them? Because I just want to go to sleep now.
Shoot, I the funny thing was I was sitting there just kind of like waiting, to see if anybody was going to, text back or anything like that. And I mean, I was in my cabin, just staying in front of the heater, trying to get warm back up again because, it was kind of damp out there and the wind had kind of made it cold. And the next thing I know, I woke up like 4 hours later on the floor in front of the heater. But that was actually my first pacerless race as well. I mean, I guess, the thing that I'll say though is, it made it a little bit easier, I guess, in some ways, because we knew so many people out there, which was kind of cool. And so, I mean, it is kind of cool because, it was like, even though, a lot of us did go, mostly pacerless, or I mean, well, Josh had Leslie, I forgot about that, but even though a lot of us did go pacerless out there, we still got to see a lot of each other,
Right.
I mean, which was kind of cool. I mean, that made it a really cool shared experience, and all.
I ran a lot of the race with Amy Clark until
Mhm.
her knee kind of gave out on her. So, and you're kind of you were ahead of me, and then Luke was way ahead of all of us. But it was I think even though Josh was the only one with a pacer, it was good that we were kind of all there together. And you
Yeah.
could see, especially even in the dark, it was out and back race, so you still were able to see everybody at least one more time. So yeah, that's those are fun races.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Getting texts, and I'm not sure who all I was getting texts from, but I was definitely getting texts from different people because there were so many different people, who were there. I want to say maybe John Studebaker's wife, maybe a few other people, but I was definitely getting texts. So it was good, along with the updates online. But to state for the record, the reason when Chris did the slam, he had pacers, is I told him that that was my condition. He absolutely was not allowed to not have a pacer. And the reason was complete ignorance on my part. I had heard a story of a runner who had basically lost his mind in the mountains. And I'm not going to name names,
Who it
but,
is.
but basically he was recounting a story about how he had literally lost his mind from the elevation. Now I found out later and understood later that was at Hard Rock, and
Okay, yeah.
so but all I knew was mountains, 100-mile, and Chris was going into the mountains to do 100 miles. So I basically said to him, this is non-negotiable. You're going to have a pacer. And that's all there is to it. Cause I'm not going to have you lose your mind in the mountains and get lost up there. So it is complete ignorance on my part, because obviously we all know now Hard Rock is it's a big difference there. But that even being said, we met some of the most incredible people that way. And so the bit of advice I'll give is, if you're going out to do a mountain race, it's some of these big ones. And if you don't have someone who's going to pace you, you can post on those boards and network, and you will get some incredible people who know those trails really well and just did a phenomenal job. So it was local people for Western states. It was a local person for Vermont. We had friends for Leadville and Wasatch help. So those were people we knew. I'll be honest with you, I think people didn't think Chris was going to actually complete the slam because it was his first 4 100s. And I think no one was ready to commit until he got a few under his belt. And then they said, okay, yeah, I'll come out and help you. They won't admit that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So yeah, I will say there's always people out there who are willing and able to help. And you find someone local, man, you can meet some great friends that way.
Yeah.
Well, and talk about one of the famous people that you got to meet while waiting for me at Wasatch.
Oh, this was one of the years. So Chris, do y'all know Errol Rocket Man?
Errol the Rocket Jones.
Errol the Rocket Jones. Do you know him?
You ever heard of him? Oh, you obviously don't listen to enough ultrarunning podcasts then.
Look him up. He's a pretty old-time trail runner. He at one point was the race director of the Bear. Oh. And so I'm at Brighton waiting for Chris. And this was one of the years he DNF'd because he was injured. So I'm waiting for Chris. It's obviously taking longer than expected because he is injured. And I get to talk to Rocket Man, whatever I always keep for the Rocket. And I know who he is. And I'm thinking, ooh, I don't know why he's here. I don't know who he's pacing, but I want him to pace Chris. So his runner comes in, who's Gary Wang, who is also very famous himself. And I, of course, am like, hey, he's not looking too good. Is he gonna drop? Like I'm honing in because I'm like, I am getting this guy for Chris. Well, you know, the good news is Gary didn't drop. He continued. And so by the time Chris got in, he was like, no, I have to drop. I'm injured. And I was like, look who I met. And of course, I had a picture of
I'm
myself.
sitting there like going, wow, you met the Rocket. That's really cool.
So yeah, I was trying. I was really like, if I have to tell you, if he had been there for Chris, I would have been like, yeah, I don't care if it's broken. I don't care what's going on. You are letting this man pace you. But you know, it all worked out. It worked out for Gary, which was I'm glad. I wouldn't have wanted him to drop just so.
Yeah. Well, that's a good takeaway because you know, I DNF'd Wasatch a couple years ago. I don't know. Yeah, it was a couple years ago. So unfortunately, I did something stupid and mountain biked a couple weeks from the race and went over the handlebars and cracked a couple ribs. And I didn't know that until after I came back because, you know, I'm stubborn and I wasn't going to give up my trip to Utah. So I made it all the way to Brighton, and you know, it was one of these races where the timing didn't work out, you know, with the girls just starting high school. They didn't want to leave school. And so Fiona had to take care of that. So I went again with a bunch of friends, but they were recruiting, you know, they were responsible for other runners and not me. So I had friends on the course, but I was I was solo, and I made it to Brighton. And I think I was doing pretty good considering and then at Brighton, which mile 70 69 70 or 70
68 now, right?
67
okay.
67, yeah, something like
so
that.
at that point, I guess if you're at my pace, it's, you know, you've been in the dark for maybe an hour and a half or so, but you're about to climb and it's going to get colder, so we're all switching into our warm gear, and I guess in those 10-15 minutes where I'm changing out my gear, you know, I reach up and slide on a long sleeve shirt, and then I was like, oh, that kind of hurt, and I was like, okay, you're fine. And then I go, and it's just a long, steep climb out, and you're leaving what feels like civilization, and you are committed for what is at least 12 miles. There's no cell reception. It's very remote, and you're, you know, you get in that point of the race where you're kind of feeling emotional. This was for me, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm about to go several hours without being able to text anybody, and I'm not totally sure if I'm going to be able to finish this race, you know. And then you're starting to weigh the risk of, if something happens to me out here, I can't text, and even if I make it to the next aid station, I'm gonna have to sit there for hours to wait for them, you know, the cutoffs to come and pack down, and I can't tell anybody where I'm at. You know, there's probably not cell reception, there's not timing at, you know, every aid station, so I got people worried about me at home. So I weighed that back and forth, and I probably told you this story, Chris. I went up and down that climb like 3 different times. I got up to the top, said, oh, okay, all right, turn around, you're being, you know, irresponsible. And I went back down. I said, no, you're being a wimp, get back up. And I went back, you know, and then I ended up going back down, went back to it and told them that I was dropping. And unfortunately, they didn't put that in until hours later. So I think when people were checking, it looked like I was just sitting there, but I'd actually gone in and out and left, but I came back, and by the time I was able to catch a ride from someone else's crew, you know, they're about an hour away. I could barely sit in the car, just moving around. So I made the right decision. But I think if I'd had a pacer, someone like, you know, pacer, or truly a safety runner, it might have made my decision. I don't know how the outcome would have been. Maybe I could have continued on, but I think having a pacer would have really changed the decision as far as whether I felt safe continuing on. At least I wouldn't be by myself, you know, in the dark, and you know, there's just so many, just all the kind of decisions that you have to make. I felt completely lucid at the time, but just having someone else to bounce off bounce off those decisions. And when you're apart from your family, they're 100
Yeah.
miles away. So so I'll have to go back to Wasatch sooner or later. Hopefully when I get a chance, if I ever get into Western States, then I can try the slam.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
I did want to go back to that for the uninitiated, that we keep talking about the slam and we just assume everyone knows, but tell about the slam for those that don't know what the Grand Slam of Ultrarunning is.
Okay, so the Grand Slam of Ultrarunning is it's basically a series where you run 4 of the oldest 100-milers in the U.S. Originally, the Grand Slam started out with Old Dominion, Western States, Leadville, and the Wasatch Front 100. Several years after they started doing the slam, they switched out Old Dominion in Vermont. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning was on it. I don't know that part of the history. I think I could probably find out, by talking to Susie Cope, and I think she kind of mentioned it once before. I think she said something about how she had convinced, like the slam committee or something like that to swap it out for some reason or another, but I don't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, it's running those 4 races within one season, and the way it was configured in the year that I ran it, that was over the course of 11 weeks, which it's like it's something and as Ann mentioned, that was my first 4 100s. I mean, I think ignorance is probably bliss, whenever you do something like that, because you don't really know what you're getting into. But at the same time, I mean, it was like, an intensive graduate course in running 100-milers that summer. I wouldn't trade it for anything, though. I mean, completing the slam, running Western States, running all of those races. I mean, it's something magical. I mean, it was a very special summer. It was very trying at times as well, because, you have to also remember that the year I did it, Ann and I had just gotten married the previous October and had combined households. So, both Ann and I have 2 kids each, and they're all relatively close in age together. And, we basically got married and threw everybody into the, same household. And then the next year we said, okay, well, we're going to go out and travel all around the U.S. for Chris to go run 100-milers the next year.
And what I'll say is, so all of our kids lived with us 24/7. It was 4 kids, 3 teenagers, and an 11-year-old autistic boy, who's my son. And the phrase I always used is, when we got married, everyone was happy for us, but no one was envious, because we threw all of those kids in the house and they did not like each other. The good thing that we had going for us is they couldn't throw a party because they would have told on each other. So that we had that going for us. But besides that, we were really probably not parents of the year, because we literally just kept flying off to different places for Chris to run these races and going, okay, figure it out, don't kill each other. So yeah, it was a crazy summer, but they lived.
So how did you even get into Western? What race did you use to get into Western States?
Well, so back then you could qualify on a 50-miler.
Yep.
And I qualified by running Rocky Raccoon 50 in under 10 and a half hours. And I think actually that was your first 100-miler.
Yep.
2012. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because I was out there talking with the Kennemers and your whole crew and Drum and everybody else out there that were waiting for you to come into pace and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I qualified at Rocky Raccoon in that muddy year.
Yeah, that
muddy mess.
That was my ankles swelled like you would not believe. At that time I was wearing calf sleeves, and then I had these little ankle socks, so there's probably like this much of skin that was exposed. So from all the mud, from whatever 40 I guess it was probably 20 miles of first just pouring rain, and then 40 to 60 miles of just mud, and my ankles were just swollen, looked like I was wearing a donut. And at the time I couldn't tell, but my crew did, and they're smart not to say anything, but afterwards they were like, "Oh my god, your ankles were horrible." So yeah, that was quite an experience, and luckily that's a good mud experience. It helped out at Bighorn, helped out at other races. So
Well, that's what every race is for, right? I mean, it is experience.
yep.
I always say that Bighorn was my penance for never actually having run a Mudlands at Grasslands.
Oh, I've had a Mudlands year as well. Hopefully we won't have that this year, but you never know. Our weather's been pretty crazy lately.
Yeah, who knows?
It hasn't been since 2015. Now that I've said that,
No.
I've gone and done it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Actually, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but it's been pretty fun, and I can't believe we're getting close to another countdown as far as
we're on the countdown already.
So I'll let I'll let you guys in with anything that you want to say about Blaze or anything like that. Talk about anything special you guys could have coming up or
anything special. Well, I mean, we have after Grasslands, we're just, right now we're getting ready for the fall season. That's mostly what we have. We'll be out at a couple of we'll be out at Coyote with helping Rob out, and out at Possum Kingdom. This will be the last year that Rob does those, and we'll be taking those over next year. And beyond that, just training up and trying to get ready, for the races and all. That's really about it right now. Trying to grow. I mean, like I said, trying to grow Lake Murray. Want to get the participation numbers up on that because, that's a race that I feel really strongly about. I mean, I think it's got a lot of the characteristics I think that will help people prepare for bigger adventures, wherever they might be.
I did have someone ask about Lake Murray tonight, so they're 90% in. That means they're in. So I think you're going to be talking to him later.
Oh, cool.
Soon. Yeah. So
I've talked to a couple of people into.
I think I might know who you're talking about.
He's in.
Yeah. So. Good deal. Good deal.
Well, again, I appreciate it. So we'll let you guys go. Thanks for popping on with us.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on. This is great. And, and I think what you guys are doing is really great. And I think it's really cool how y'all are, really building, community out there. And, I think it's really cool just to see, the number of people that you're really helping, to, be very resilient in a lot of these races and stuff.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Absolutely.
All right. You guys have a good night.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.